See Brown in your face.
Have you heard of Everything at Once?
Do you know about Everything at Once?
It's internationally known.
Aliens listen to it.
It's the best ever.
If there's something you're looking for in the 814, or feeling a little bored and think there ain't no more, check out Everything at Once and allow it to be your source. It's that raw podcast that's always showing support, highlighting the scene. No need to take I-90 to Peep or 79 to see how it be. Interviewing your locals with mindsets that are global. Innovators and creators on every single upload. So much going on in the EPA.
Incredible content.
Everything at Once will keep you up to date.
Amazing guests.
What you doing? Come through and hang with Tony and Dave.
Community driven.
Bringing everything at once from around the way. Everything at once from around the way. Hey.
Please listen. We love you. Everything at Once.
Everything at Once.
Hello.
Hey.
And welcome to another episode of Everything at Once.
Everything at Once.
We are super happy. We hope you guys enjoyed that new intro song as much as we did.
It's so awesome.
It's incredible. Thank you, CEE Brown, for creating it for us. And he is going to be on the show next week for you guys. You're not going to want to miss it. Incredible stuff from an incredible local Erie hip-hop artist.
Yeah, you're definitely going to want to check it out and make sure that you definitely check out and appreciate this intro song just as much as we do.
That's right, and check out CEE Brown's YouTube and all of his social medias as well. But back to business, Dave. First, we want to thank our Patreon producers, Brian G, Josh W, Ian D, Nick G, and Sadie M. You guys are incredible.
You guys are the best. And Patreon is an awesome way to support this show and say thanks. You can become a Patreon supporter by clicking the link below and choosing to be an intern, assistant, or producer level supporter.
It would be so awesome if you guys supported us for the low cost of $5 a month to become an intern level supporter.
It's a slamming deal.
And we also want to thank all of the businesses that sponsored this episode. They get the Everything at Once stamp of approval. We could not do it without them.
No, we couldn't.
First, we'd like to thank AFB Services. AFB Services specializes in landscape and property maintenance. This means they can take care of all your lawn care needs. Everything from reseeding yards, flower bed clean out, tree work, edging, and miscellaneous needs.
Check out their webpage at afbservicesllc.com or give Aaron a call at 814-528-7464.
That's right. Give him a call.
We would also like to thank friends of the show, Cauldron and Thorne.
They're incredible.
They are very incredible. It is the world's largest witchcraft store. Oh my God, you got a witch hat.
I sure do.
That's pretty awesome. They offer a conglomerate of crystals, books, ceremonial supplies, incense, herbs, oracle and tarot cards, and self-care items. Oh look, we got all kinds of stuff popping out here today.
All things that you could get at Cauldron and Thorne. Go check them out. They are just west of the Colony Plaza on 8th Street. It's a real grocery store for the soul.
And Cauldron and Thorne is open 7 days a week and 24 hours online at cauldronandthorne.com.
We also want to thank Werner Books. Werner Books is Erie's community bookstore located in the Liberty Plaza. They sell everything from new to used books at once. They also have a trade-in program to exchange lightly used books for credit towards new books, or as we like to say in the biz, new content. Check out their website, wernerbooks.com, for information about book clubs, author signings, and other events. Stop in and find your next great read.
And our latest sponsor, Tommy's Automotive. Tommy's Automotive can take care of everything car-related. Tommy's Automotive is a reliable, trustworthy service provider.
That's right. Tommy's Automotive can take care of brakes, exhaust, fluid changes, spark plugs, and all other maintenance needs.
Tommy's Automotive also does fluid film undercoating. Book your appointment today.
Call Tommy at 814-384-8088. Give them a call.
Give them a call.
They'll help you out. Fix your car. It's incredible.
It'll be running like it was just off the showroom floor.
That's you're gosh dang right, Dave. It sure will. And now we have our next guest, who I've been personally really excited about talking with this person.
Me too.
He's our first political nominee person.
Mr. Rock Copeland.
Mr. Rock Copeland.
City Council
nominee.
He is awesome. He has an incredible vision for Erie, and we learned a lot.
All about his beliefs and all the things and changes he wants to make. He really gives me the feeling that he is a politician that I can trust, which is unusual.
Yeah, same with me. And, great things come when change is facilitated. And,
that's right.
And with positive intentions. And we really believe in Rock, and we hope after listening that you can garnish some information that gives you a positive feeling about the future of Erie.
That's right. And now we present to you Rock Copeland. Gideon makes sure that we do a good job down here, so I'm glad that she's hanging out for this episode here with you, Rock Copeland, future city councilor, or current city council nominee.
Well, actually, technically, with the primary is what makes you the Democratic nominee.
Okay.
But this year, without anyone on the other side of the party, or the other party, running, that is effectively.
Yeah. That's unusual, I feel like. That there weren't any Republican nominees.
I'd have to go back and look. It's not that unusual. Usually you have one or two. Mm-hmm. But there's been years that hasn't. And it's funny, I've poured through the past
history
results quite a bit, trying to dissect which voting precincts are like the highest turnout and stuff. So I've been trying to pay attention to that. Yeah, usually there's one or two, but they usually don't fare very, very well. I mean,
Erie's a blue city for the most part.
Yeah, when you're crossing the line with, let's say, 3,800 votes, somewhere around there, and the average Republican, I'm bad at number recall, I want to say like 2,500 votes, which is actually a really big delta in the city.
Yeah. Interesting. So you and the other Democratic nominees have the primary coming up. Everybody get out and vote May 16th, right? That's the day that we all need to show up and let our voices be heard to make this impact around the city, or make the positive changes that will actually affect our daily lives here in the city.
Yeah, definitely.
So what are some of the things that you're really focused on or looking towards to start your platform or start your campaign as a city councilman?
In terms of the viewpoints?
Yeah. Like, what are some things that you'd like to see change, or some of the things that you're going to shoot for, some of your goals as a counselor?
Yeah, I mean, so looking at the city and seeing all the people that are like so excited about everything, and like the energy around the city with the revitalization that we have, we get a chance to like rewrite who we are. And the biggest thing that I want to show up for is making sure that when we rewrite our history, that we're not history, but rewrite our future.
Sure.
That it's more inclusive and equitable across the table. I mean, if you look at all the investment we have downtown, it's our highest density of tax-exempt properties. More services, not more dollars. And then you go out to the neighborhoods. I'm knocking doors every day, and it's pretty clear that some neighborhoods get a good deal more investment than others. And we should be doing everything we can to lift all neighborhoods up with us. There's a lot of private spending between like the EDDC and others that are driving that economic injection downtown. And I just think that our leaders should act with intention to make investments in our neighborhoods and schools where we live. And that's where you get the return on investment too, right? Most of our revenues come from property taxes. And so sometimes to have funding, they just want to increase property taxes. And so we experience that. I mean, I have rather high property taxes on my house. It's better if we add wealth to our community, right?
Yeah.
Increase the property values, so that's a wealth and asset for you to maybe potentially leave down to the next generation. But that is also, an organic growth of your tax base.
So you're describing growing wealth in our community to raise funds through the increased taxes that people will pay from making more money.
Yeah, so let's change the phrasing just a little bit. Organic tax growth, because we're gaining wealth through property.
Right.
Not a tax increase. And I think that's important because we already have quite high taxes, and it's a real impediment to our growth as a community that we have terrific affordable housing currently. I was able to buy a very modest home and know that if I were to get laid off, that I could still have that home. But I'll tell you what, that property taxes is just enough that it really makes a big difference in people's lives. So, yeah.
It's a huge bump in my mortgage, personally.
Yeah. I mean, even PMI. When you're talking like $80 a month because you didn't have 20% down, that's a big impediment. So, we can invest in our communities and community build, make places where people want to live, want to stay, and have an organic increase because people want to be here, demand to be here. But then at the same time, making sure that you have affordable housing options, that you still have a healthy renters market, hopefully one in which you send your rent check to someone in town,
right,
and not California. But yeah, you have to do it on a multi-pronged basis. It's got to be both.
So we are trying to keep housing affordable, but still upgrade the status to make it more desirable for people to move into the city. How do we do that how do you do that as a city councilor?
Well, and I try to preface everything is that you have to build consensus around these concepts and ideas.
Sure.
That having a unilateral plan is not wise. But there has been a lot of discussion around not just a community land bank like we have now, where people can purchase a property that was previously blighted for a very low amount, but actually buying tracts of property, blocks of property, and investing dollars to bring those homes up to current standards, make them nice places that people want to live. And then along with that, when you sell it to people with a contract that says, look, in 10 years you're allowed to sell the property, but you're only allowed to sell it for X amount more than what you paid for it, so that you keep those neighborhoods affordable, that you're not changing the landscape of the people that live there, that you're not just gentrifying an area, which to some people I think is to say force current residents out and have new wealthier people move in. That's not what we want to do. We want to make sure that people are able to stay in their homes, the neighborhoods that they've lived in for the last 30, 40 years. There's a lot of seniors now in their homes that they have been in since they've been built. You go down a whole street, and every door I knock is somebody like, I moved here in 1960, I've been in this house since then, and they worry about the security of being able to stay in that neighborhood. And so there's a lot of levers that you've got to be able to move, and I think the most important thing is when you are going to move that lever, that you're doing it for the right reasons, that you have a reasoning that informs your decision making, that you're thinking of justice, you're thinking of empathy, you're thinking about the life in those walls, thinking of community members as people and not just numbers on a balance sheet.
Right. And that's an interesting needle to thread, because you want to grow this city, develop this city, and with that growth and development, I'd imagine would be a plan to get, young people to come into Erie, whether it's from the county or like Mill Creek or Harbor Creek, or maybe from like a different state college students that might come here or end up here because of
school or internships,
growing industry with whatever's in place. But then you want to keep people that have been residents of this city for extended periods of time in places where they can thrive and better their lives, become homeowners.
I think that we need to remember that we have a lot of capacity here. And I terrible number recall, I want to say we peaked at somewhere around 140,000 citizens, and we're at 94,000 now.
Wow.
We've we have been losing citizens left and right. We're still on a downhill slide, even despite all of the economic investment that we've had in our city and the terrific anchors of businesses that we have downtown. We have capacity to have a lot more people. We did. And so I think that if you're making wise decisions, particularly on the zoning side, for increased density in downtown, to have more people live there, so that that's a place that people not only work, but that they spend their day-to-day lives, that they raise families there, that they enjoy being able to come downstairs from their condo or apartment, whatever it may be, that might not exist yet, and go to a downtown restaurant and be an economic driver. Adding people to our population is the key to growing. A shrinking city is never a healthy one.
Right.
And so when you got to build communities and create spaces that people want to be a part of. And when we have one of the things I love about Erie is how welcoming we are for the refugee community. We're a hot spot for people to come to. Like, this is the first home that they have, and so many of these people stay here for 10 years, and then they're on Mr. Schember's live stream that do, I think, on a monthly basis, of people that they just admitted as new U.S. citizens that become productive members of our society and add to the fabric of our city. That we need that growth. We need those people. And I'll tell you, I came here because there was family. My ex-wife's family was from the region. I just met a gentleman a couple weeks ago, same story. Lived in the same neighborhood I did in Chicago. Came here because his wife's family was from here. He's been here for 16 months. He's on the board of a terrific nonprofit, adding value there. He bought a building downtown, is investing tons of money into this building and creating a new economic anchor in our downtown.
And I think that's so attractive to a lot of young people, especially now, because I've had friends who, went to college and moved away, and now they're coming back to Erie because, hey, I can do my job remotely, and the housing is affordable here, and instead of living in the city where we were originally located, now we're not priced out of having a family anymore. We're not priced out of traveling across the country and going on nice vacations and living in a much more comfortable way than they would in a city like Chicago or a city like New York or wherever it may be. And people realizing and coming back is, I think, tremendously valuable, because these people have skills and they're bringing that money and that income into the city, which benefits everybody. It's an amazing prospect, and now they can live their life in a richer, fuller way than they could when they were paying thousands of dollars in rent for a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment.
I think. Go.
Well, one of our city council people, Susanna Faulkner, is one of those people that when she left Erie for education, she studied abroad, and I think she got her master's in London and then studied in Ireland too, spent some time working in government work in California, and then she came back to Erie and is ready to go and is making big waves day one coming back. She's doing amazing work with Sisters of St. Joseph and getting involved in our local government and bringing all kinds of value. And bringing those people back that left Erie for, let's say, economic benefit elsewhere, and then that workplace flexibility is huge for us. And I think that's what's really neat about the Radius co-work space.
Oh yeah,
is that
they're awesome.
So many people can spend time there as like their office, right? I work in my basement, and it's not terribly great for mental health and depression. Like,
sure, it's nice to have windows.
Yeah, and like sunshine is nice, and it's a little damp and cold down there. But that workplace flexibility though is huge to allow people to come back here, and they're spending money here. Even though maybe their workplace is in Pittsburgh or something, and they're working remote, but then they are adding to our economy, and we need to leverage the hell out of that.
And I think, it's an interesting direction that we're going, and it's the world at large. Growing up, like, Erie was a GE town. Like, as GE shrunk down and, like, the jobs became less and less available, they moved to Texas. Hammer Mill. That was, like, part of, like, the migration out of Erie, these places closing down. And a lot of times you hear, you know, if you're not a professional, it's like, oh, Erie's a 2-business town or a 3-business town. People are like UPMC or Erie Insurance. So it's a good place for skilled professionals, entrepreneurs, people from working from home. Like, what can we do for the people that aren't the skilled professionals that could get the jobs at, like, the GE and Hammer Mill before, that are still, like, they need?
I think it's important to remember, as much as we have an identity of, you know, of Erie and a pride in who we are, we need to remember that we're not the only Rust Belt city that's been going through these issues. Hey, you go from Buffalo all the way to Milwaukee, and all major population centers of, let's say, more than 100,000 people in 1960 have gone through what we've gone through for the last 50 or 60 years. And some cities like Pittsburgh and Buffalo have reinvented themselves. They've recreated an economy that was based on more than just large-scale, heavy industrial manufacturing, right? That they diversified, that they, like us, have the healthcare sector, the education sector, and technology. We've got some light manufacturing with the plastic injection, and, like, we can invite new tech sectors to come in, you know, chip manufacturing, green energy, and like really truly diversify and you can create incentives to have these businesses want to come here. And you think about what Silicon Valley is. What an absolute amazing accident that there was this amazing, I don't even know how to explain it, like an incubator of just so many great, and still an incubator of so many great new companies and entrepreneurs, and they created a whole sector out of nothing. And from a technology that didn't exist prior, right? And maybe to a certain extent, they're going to find out that they need to diversify too, as evidenced by the bank that just closed out there.
Right.
But, you know, you can be an incubator for all of these different kinds of new industries and make big bets on life-changing policy. We have the ability to make really big decisions if we're brave enough.
Do you think it would be in the best interest of, I know, like, it's all, you know, team decision making, it's not you, but just in your opinion, do you think it'd be in the best interest of Erie to, like, make a few educated decisions on certain sectors that might be progressing upward right now, and trying to bring those types of industries or workplaces into the Erie area?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the interesting things about being a city council person that people don't necessarily consider. You're on the dais and you're making decisions on ordinances and et cetera. You're also given a far outweighed platform to be able to go talk to people, to be an advocate for Erie, to reach out to certain sectors. Like, I know one of our council people has had a lot of outreach to the fiber connectivity, to have gigabit internet throughout our community, and, like, has advocated for them to come here. And then, so your role can be so much more than just sitting on the dais 2 Wednesdays a week.
Right. And I think that it's really interesting that that's already started in some ways here with VelocityNet, which has been around forever, and they're offering new fiber optic services. Well, hopefully seeming to be growing fiber optic services. VelocityNet, if any of you guys are listening, we'd love it around here on Upper State Street.
Just got it on my road. I'm super excited. I admit the election has kept me busy enough that I haven't set aside the time to switch my service, but I'm excited to.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, through city council, you're able to help facilitate and enable these companies that are already existing and new companies to come in and bring new services that people want and desire.
But even, you know, just working with City Hall to affect policies, it means to some extent There's more ownership of policy at the executive. Most policy from city council comes from how we decide to spend money.
Right.
That is the primary position of power, impact in people's day-to-day lives, is choosing how, when, where, and on what we're going to spend our money. But yeah, I mean, being an advocate for your community, using that position as a bully pulpit to an extent,
Sure.
and I mean that in a nice way, to advocate for people to come here and invest in this community and have those conversations, develop the relationships required to bring the attention here. Yeah.
Right. And you guys are not messing around with like small dollars and cents either. You guys have a pretty substantial budget to, make positive influences and positive changes around here.
Yeah. It's not a small amount of money. It's 96 million, somewhere around there. The challenge is when you're spending, I think, somewhere around $5 million a year to service your bonds, $25 million a year to service your pensions, you'll find that $96 million doesn't stretch as far as you think it would.
Right.
And it's a problem because...
and things are expensive.
Yeah,
These kinds of projects that we're talking about are hugely...
In my profession, I work in the construction industry, selling electrical components to contractors when they're going to build a building. And the items that I sell now are double what they used to be a year and a half, 2 years ago. So yeah, I mean, it is not getting any cheaper for us. So we have an upward pressure on the cost of everything that we do, even just paper. You know, like... That's probably a pretty decent sized line item down at the city hall in terms of how many things they're printing out,
Right.
I mean, not on the scale of $95 million, but
No, I get it though, yeah.
And at the same time, we are not growing revenues. And that's a challenge. So there's going to be a lot of calls for cuts. People are going to want to deal with the budget by cutting services, and a city that is not growing is dying, and cutting services is like the mortal wound that kills the beast, right? And I think that we need to be watchful and really think about, there's going to be some tough decisions made in the next couple of years. I mean, there's a structural deficit. We're going to have to figure out a lot of issues, and we need to have people there that when they're making those decisions that they're thinking about justice and empathy. There's a critique that sometimes governments pick winners and losers, and the large extent they do. We got 44% of our children that are in poverty.
Right.
That's a decision. Like, we make a decision to let that continue to happen because we're going to spend money somewhere else. And the money is finite.
Right.
So
and you can't make everybody happy.
Yeah, and that's the challenge too, is when you could make the most popular decision in the world and 98% of people are just over the moon happy, and 2% of the population is going to make a whole heck of a lot of noise that makes you feel like you're doing a really bad thing. And so you need to really be able to take it on the chin to some extent and just know that you're making the right decisions for the people that are most at need.
So what kind of services would you most prioritize that are being offered? Because like you said, difficult cuts, things going on. What are the most important things to you in your line of vision for what the city is and what it can be?
Well, there's a lot of emphasis being put on our fire department, on the emergency care, on the police station right now. And I think that is a fair emphasis. They save lives and they make sure that communities are safe. I also would say, though, that slight shifts in missions for some agencies, like our police department perhaps, that could focus more on the community building side of things. And we just hired 3 new officers, and all 3 live in the city. They're part of our community, and that should be the goal, is to have officers in our community, and that when they're dealing, let's say, with an overdose, that they're referring them to treatment and not referring them to prosecution.
Right.
You know, that we're, it's interesting, we have 6, I believe it's 6 code enforcement officers, and Allentown has 18. I was just talking with somebody at the Redevelopment Authority about this. 18. And it's like, well, how can they afford that? You know what they do? They don't just write tickets for people that are not, quality of life tickets, or not keeping their grass mowed a certain height. They're actually going out, actively going into the community and saying, hey, did you know that if you applied for this fund at the city, that you can get new siding? Get a new roof? Like the owners of my home before me that I purchased my home from, they got a whole new roof and all new siding put on, because with that, and my neighbors right now are going through the same thing. We have so many programs at the city that their most difficult task is making people aware of the resources and funds that are available to them. We sometimes have to reallocate funds that weren't spent because a project didn't get off the ground, or the mission wasn't fulfilled, and so we have this bag of money that we got to move back into a general fund, or move around, and shifting the mission of our services, I think, is the biggest thing that we need to do, because we need police officers on the street.
Sure.
We don't need a police state, right? Those are 2 different things. And having a police force that is a community building and involved, like, I don't know if you guys seen the Police Athletic League. I think it's pretty cool. Like, a bunch of cops in their spare time, not as part of their role, but like as an organization that they're involved in, go and participate in athletics with youth. And what a difference that makes to have people's lives positively impacted by somebody that they might otherwise fear.
Right. I feel like there's a very, at least for me personally, I can't speak for anybody else, but there's always been a deep ingrained distrust for any sort of government entity, whether that's city council, mayor, police, any bureaucratic organization. They're more than likely not out for my best interest personally.
Yeah, I can understand that. I've had that viewpoint at times in my life. I think that sometimes it's warranted. There are some things that government has done throughout history that is not awesome. Human rights abuses. I mean, like, really, our country was founded on slavery. We can't ignore that, right?
Right.
I mean, that was a legitimate institution, stood up and continued
For hundreds of years.
Yeah. So I get where you're coming from, but there's you have to have, how do I say this? I think it's important to have an optimism and to make a choice as to whether, when we give our tax dollars to the government, whether those tax dollars are being affected to improve our lives or just continue the status quo. And believe me, taxes aren't going away.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't that be wonderful? Who doesn't want to keep their money? And I totally understand that. But I personally believe that when we give our tax dollars to the government, that should serve to benefit everyone in our society in the most equitable way that we can. It's not always possible to be 100% equitable, but you try to make good decisions. And so, I mean, I guess that's the pushback that I would give on that, is if you're not seeing your government make fair, equitable decisions that's improving your lives, you could make the decision to jump in the race and
get involved,
affect it yourself, to go to a city council meeting, to have your voice heard at open comments, to go online and read the draft ordinances and read the language, and then if you take issue with a particular line and they're like, oh, hey, did you think that could affect you this way? Mm-hmm. There was a gentleman that came to a meeting a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was a week ago, a realtor, and he was pointing out during some debate around short-term rentals, I think he said there was 48 properties for sale in the city right now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like, that is rough. If you want new people to come and move into the city, they have to have a place to live.
Right.
You know, and then when you have out-of-town corporations buying up these properties as investment, that they can get a return on investment in 2 years by renting the property out as an Airbnb, that's an issue, because that's a residence where not only is they're the tax dollars from the property taxes, but also they're injecting money into our local economy because they spend every day here. Their lives are here, and these are decisions that you can make in terms of what does your community look like, what should it do, and you can get involved to affect that.
Right. So going back to the Airbnbs and stuff, if there is a demand for these types of things and there's 48 properties for sale, does that mean that we're like creating an artificial demand, or how else will these do you imagine these needs would be met for people that are coming here that are looking for a place to stay that's not a giant hotel?
There's a lot of, just to add on to that, a lot of the stuff that's going on, not just downtown in Erie, like redeveloping the Bayfront, how that's being changed, like out in Mill Creek, buying up all the area around Prescott to spruce it up for tourism. So like there's a very concerted effort to raise tourism in Erie. So like I think that's a great question, because
I think it's a balance. Everything is trying to very carefully thread the needle to try to make sure that each and every decision that you make is creating the community that you hope to see in the future. And one of the best things about passing an ordinance, if you mess up, you can change it. Mm-hmm. And it's okay on occasion to make a mistake in good faith.
Sure. And
I think it's okay to change your mind based on new information. I think it's required.
Absolutely.
You know, that is critical thinking. That, and so you do your best to make sure that you are positively impacting the community in a fair, just, and equitable way. And you know, in terms of the Airbnbs, yeah, there's a balance there.
Right.
Do we need a certain amount of properties for traveling business people? Tourism. When we go on vacation, my girlfriend loves staying at an Airbnb.
We always do.
She likes staying in a home.
I don't, but
to me, it makes no difference. I don't go on vacation to stay in a space. Mm-hmm. I'd rather get a hotel room because I don't plan on being in that space. I plan on seeing the place that I'm at.
Right.
But you know, I mean, there's a place for that. And if you are building part of your diverse economy, and one of those puzzle pieces is the tourism through your summer months, yeah, that's something to have there. But you also need to make sure that we have new housing starts.
Right. And I think it's really big too to look at I have like a negative disposition towards like landlords a little bit personally, but I would much rather see a realtor that has a couple properties that's doing Airbnbs versus a giant conglomerate company that has thousands of Airbnbs all across the country. And I understand that is a completely legitimate form of income for people in a lot of different ways, to rent out a space or to invest into a property and rent it out as Airbnbs. But I'd rather see that, I guess what I'm saying is I'd rather see that money stay in the community to a local entity rather than a big national conglomerate of Airbnbs, or a big superstore of Airbnbs, or landlord, or whatever you want to call them.
100%. And I talk about this a lot, even in terms of our rate of home ownership in the African American community. I think it's a 3% rate of home ownership. And so one of my friends was talking to me, and they said that the average dollar stays in the black community for 6 minutes.
Wow.
Literally, they get their paycheck, and $1 every 6 minutes leaves the community to go to some other neighborhood, to go to other businesses that do not stay within the community. And where does a lot of that go? Out on a rent check. I mean, you're talking people routinely have a third or even up to half, maybe even more. I can't say that I have every shared living experience to know, but I mean, significant amount of their income going to the place that they live. And when we send that money to a conglomerate in California that is largely absent, not reinvesting in the property, not taking care of it, not making sure that it's livable conditions, yeah, it's a major issue. I think the challenge is finding consensus to make those right decisions, working with the solicitor at City Hall to make sure that you're operating within the bounds of law, because there are a lot of concerns in law around property.
Sure.
And, you know, where possible, you make decisions that are going to increase the wealth of our community, keep the wealth in our community, you know, and make sure that it's experienced equitably.
Right.
I was just going to say, it's such a interesting conundrum going on right now, not just in our community, but in the country at large, because like you want people to be able to be homeowners, but you have like inflation kicked in where mortgage rates are higher, so people don't want to buy right now, or like interest in general has gone up. You were just talking about that with construction, like everything's costing more, so landlords are charging more for rent. So that's more that you're putting yourself in the hole out of every paycheck.
And incomes aren't going up either.
Wages are stagnant.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, even with the opportunities to be made to have housing available, it's still so difficult for people to attain that goal when they have to pay increasing rent and they're not making more money to make up for that.
Right. And homeownership is really where I think a lot of wealth building really like starts. You know what I mean? You have something that is hopefully going to be worth more in the future, and that you're going to be able to hold on to and kind of pass that on to future generations, or maintain that legacy.
Yeah, when the home is affordable, when the loan is affordable, and you service that debt for long periods of time, it does become an asset. Until that point, though, it is a liability for so many people. So I mean, it's a double-edged sword there. And I think that the city really needs to look at creative solutions, big changes that can increase density, that we have more mixed-use buildings where the bottom 2 stories are largely commercial and office space, and then the upper stories can be either condos or affordable rentals as well. And there are restrictions around density and how many parking spaces per person of
living in an area.
Yeah, exactly. And we need to be able to be creative to make systemic change to improve lives. I mean, and I think that's the big thing. And I'm so wary of anyone that's going to say, I have these big plans, because they can't affect that on their own. But if you have 7 people on the dais that are willing to make big bets on Erie and the belief in the survival and that our city can flourish, if we make some big decisions to really positively benefit people, I think there's such a resistance to change.
Sure.
People fear change. I've been in this neighborhood for 30 years, and it's always been like this, and I don't want the quality of my neighborhood to change. Those are legitimate concerns. And we have to hear those concerns, but we also have to take a principled stand at times and say, look, these are the decisions that I'm trying to make a bigger improvement for our city. And that takes courage.
Absolutely. It's a huge difficulty for a lot of people to see long term, and how our decisions now are going to affect us in 15, 20 years, especially when there is a short-term reward involved in a lot of decisions. You know what I mean? Do we want to flourish right now for the next year or two, or do we want something that's sustainably growing over the next 10, 15, 20 years?
Yeah, I've heard comments from sitting council people in regards to when good, legitimate questions have been brought up about the future costs of certain implementation of certain programs, in the long term. What does this look like when we're budgeting 5 years from now? What does it look like when we're budgeting for 10 years from now? And I've heard the comment, I don't care what happens 2 years from now.
Right.
We're in the now, and this is a good thing for us now.
And I want to win a re-election.
No, that particular individual that said that is term limited. And I look at that and I go, look, the last 200 years of history, the last 200 years of decisions of city, civic leaders, organizational leaders, the people that have come before us have made the decisions that created the Erie that we have today. Mm-hmm. Even in just the way that banking used to work before there were credit scores, and it very much relied on what you looked like, where was your job, who do you know? And so then you had neighborhoods like the one that I live in today, that one of the ads, when it was being developed, was it was white.
There's also
this is 100 years ago.
100 years, right. Yeah. And I mean, there's people that are still they're old, but they were alive when that happened. It's not like it's that far back in history, but even diverging from the civic side of things, you've seen over the last handful of years on a local and a federal level, even things like the environment. It's like, oh, we got one world to live on, but let's not join the other countries in the world to try to make this a livable space for 50 years because we have to drill oil. And I understand that there's so much that goes into that kind of thing. But it's just what you were talking about, how people are just concerned about what's going on right now in this moment, even if it's a detriment in the future. And that's a real barricade, because a lot of people don't care outside of the moment.
Yeah, and for short-term political expediency, not willing to make bold decisions that will positively benefit the city for decades to come. I am building. I have a desire to build. I shouldn't say I am building. It takes a village,
right,
or a city.
Yeah.
I want us to build an Erie that is better tomorrow and is durable for decades to come, so that when my son or my daughter are my age, 2050, maybe my daughter wants to run for city council, I don't want her to be facing a crisis, a massive deficit, a restructuring. These are things that we can make and make sure that we're not passing on the systemic issues that we're facing today to tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. And I think that goes back a lot to what you were saying earlier about diversification and not having one linchpin of GE or Hammermill or the industrial sector as a linchpin holding everything together. We need to spread this around and be a community and have more than one facet that makes this community livable and gives people opportunities to have a livable wage, a comfortable, livable wage that can sustain them and a family.
Yeah, and I imagine that it felt really good in, let's say, 1970 to be a decently paid union worker at one of these facilities where your father worked for 30 years, 35 years, retired with a pension. Mm-hmm. And that it probably looked really great for the future to know that when I retire and I will have a pension, and then my son can get a job, my daughter can get a job, and it probably felt really good.
Absolutely.
And every Rust Belt city across the region found out real quick that the rug got pulled out from under them.
Mm-hmm. But there's been a few places that have reinvented themselves.
And they have to. And that's the big thing, that to be really optimistic for the future and know that you can rebuild, that you have a Pittsburgh that is now not just based on steel making, which is still a part of their culture and who they are. There are still facilities that are involved in steel production, not nearly as many. Mm-hmm. But they have a healthcare sector, they have an education sector, they have a tech sector, they have a diversified economy that it will withstand a lot of weather. You know, and when one employer picks up and pulls out like a hammer mill, it's not the most catastrophic thing in the world. We need to have more jobs than people.
Yeah.
And use that as a method of bringing people in, because why are they leaving?
Right.
Economic opportunity.
Absolutely.
And I think that as far as like staying here in Erie, the economic advantages are tremendous just because of our cost of living and the housing availability and the things that are going on. Because what you might need in another city, you might need a $200,000 income to live in some of the houses that are in Mill Creek, where instead an employer can pay an employee significantly less and still have that same quality of living compared to some of the other suburbs in bigger cities.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, I would have been sitting in the living room with my then wife, talking about some of the difficulty we had in parenting, some of the difficulty we had in not really loving the area that we lived in. And I really enjoyed Erie. I always liked coming and visiting Erie. And I was just like, let's just go. Let's just move. Let's just go. Your family's there. We like it there. Let's go. And her pushback was that she felt that she did not have, I don't think she used the word economic opportunity, mm-hmm. but she didn't feel that she had the ability to make the same amount of income that she made commuting into Chicago. Mm-hmm. And one day she got a message from a friend that the Achievement Center was hiring, and we didn't even know whether she would get the job. We didn't know how much the job would pay, and hearing the news that there might be a job available to her, we made the decision to move to Erie in about 30 seconds. And by so that would have been right about this time of year, 10 years ago. And by July, she had already moved, and I was coming to follow. And she gave up half her income to come here.
Wow,
half.
That's huge.
I think the scary thing. And this is why diversification is so important, though. I think the scary thing, I mean, I guess if you work from home now or you're hybrid, it's a little different. But coming to Erie, you have those opportunities where it's cheaper to live here. But in a place like Chicago or New York or whatever, like if you get fired from your job or if there's layoffs or whatever, there's so many other places where you can go and find employment. Whereas somewhere like Erie, you know, if you have a sweet job here and then the company closes down or moves to a different city or what have you, there's a lot slimmer pickings, at least in this current moment.
Mm-hmm. There's also a lot less competition, though. So
to an extent, I mean, you talk to people at Erie Insurance. Mm-hmm. That's a tough nut to crack.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You have to be a top performer and do very well to get in at Erie Insurance and in a larger role, let's say. Mm-hmm. And there is a smaller talent pool.
There is a smaller talent pool.
But that also means that maybe you might have a smaller pool of innovative entrepreneurs and creative thinkers. And again, it all goes back to people. getting people here, getting people wanting to be here, building a community that people are proud to be a part of. And, you know, you attract the talent pool.
Right.
And those people build businesses, build an economy. People are the economy.
Yeah.
Right? That's what makes things go. Yeah. And that's why cities do so well. You pool resources. You are able to have people focus on their strengths and have other people fill the needs that they might have that are not their strengths. I mean, it's all about people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just. It sounds so corny to say, is that like government's about people. That's the job, and people that are in government should care about people, mm-hmm. all of them, mm-hmm. regardless of race, gender, sex, orientation, like all people.
Right.
And you need people that are going to make decisions that are beneficial to the whole, and making sure that our marginalized groups aren't left behind when we make a decision that, let's say, benefits 75% of the city, but hey, this 25 is mm-hmm. not going to do well. Like, no, that's not good.
Right.
We need to be mutually beneficial to everyone. And that's, again, making decisions based on justice and empathy.
And I think that identifying the people that need the help is also really important, and having the discretion to see, oh, well, you know, this is going to help the 75% that's already doing pretty good, but it's not going to be good for the 25% that's struggling, or maybe higher. I mean, it's relative percentages, obviously, but identifying that happy medium where the 25% that's struggling gets that boost that they may need and is still not to the detriment of people that may be doing better.
Yeah.
Because I think that once you have something that benefits and raises up the lower the people that are struggling, the lower socioeconomic people, it not only benefits them, but it also does benefit those people that are higher up on the socioeconomic ratings or on the totem pole ladder, however you want to phrase it.
Yeah, I mean, so if you're trying to climb a ladder and its feet is on the ground level, mm-hmm. you're able to climb it a lot faster than somebody that can climb out of a 10-foot hole,
right,
on the same ladder. And that when you put everybody's ladder on a level playing field, that they all have the same opportunity to add value to society.
Right.
It's awfully hard to add value to society when you're already underground.
Sure.
And so I think that when you're making those decisions, when you bring up the lowest of the low in our society, the poorest, people talk a lot about our homeless problem downtown.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And that's an interesting phrase. Because when they say homeless problem, do you suppose that they're talking about moving them out? Or do you think that they're talking about getting them help?
They're talking about moving them out. I would say I don't agree with that, but I think that that's the tone that goes with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I hear. Obviously, I can't speak for everyone. I'm sure, like I said, we have 2,000 nonprofits in the city doing an amazing mission of improving lives in so many countless ways. And it's great because it's needed. But when we talk about our homeless problem, and you could resolve it with housing first, with wraparound services of mental health and addiction treatment, and that like cities that have implemented programs like that, when they have funding, that's the hard part. But when they've done that, 4 out of 5 stay permanently housed. Mm-hmm. That when you're actually able to give resources and there's this awful distinction that people want to make in society of a handout or a hand up. Mm-hmm. When you have nothing, a hand out or a hand up are the same thing. Mm-hmm. And when you make decisions to help out the lowest of the low so that they can come and be productive members of society, and that's I hate that term too. because it also detracts away from people and their their basic humanity. You don't have to be a homeowner to be deserving of basic human dignity.
Sure.
And I think that's an important distinction too. That like people that are struggling deserve help because they're people. Mm-hmm. And that if I was in that position, I hope somebody would help me. And I'm so glad to not be in that position, and I want to help others. Mm-hmm. That's important.
And I don't agree with this, but like I feel like with so many people, like such a high percentage compared to the rest of the country and the state of people in Erie living in poverty or living paycheck to paycheck, I feel like there's a certain amount of like, I don't think jealousy is the right word, but like people will be like, well, where's my help? You know, they might be doing better than someone who is at the very bottom, but they're not doing, like, it's like head barely above water. And that's a feeling that a lot of people like give out there on like social media or like, you know, when you get into conversations is like, well, I'm struggling too.
Jealousy, not just jealousy. Jealousy is the wrong word for it.
I agree. I was trying to think of something else.
Yeah, having contempt for others that are receiving aid when in your mind you feel that you are self-made, that your hard work, your position in life was 100% won and fought for on your own blood, sweat, and tears. I get that. I also think it's really important for people to acknowledge that as much as your hard work has done so much for you in your life, so is fate. Mm-hmm. To be in the right place at the right time, to have the right job, to not, let's say for me, 5 years ago, going through a divorce, I had a significant depression issue. Mm-hmm. I could have very easily kept going to a beer can and drowning my sorrow instead of facing the realities and starting to try to improve my life. And I could have been one of those people who literally destroyed their lives because they thought there was no way to get better.
Right.
I found resources. I found therapy. I found developing a life philosophy that, you know, started to really look deeply, introspectively into what I was doing and the decisions that I was making and finding the ability to say that I was wrong. And like, we got to acknowledge that so much of life, we like to think that we fought for it, and I do. Mm-hmm. I fight to keep a roof over my kids' heads, and I want to provide that security to them forever. Sometimes there are things in life that happen to you that are beyond your control.
Sure.
Sometimes it's the neighborhood you're born into. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's the parents that you had. Sometimes it's the fact that you had a parent that struggled with their mental health and didn't get the help and was, you know, addicted and throwing away their lives, and you are a toddler.
You don't even have a chance.
With no way to affect the change in that. And then people wonder why 15 years down the road that the same people are having a trouble with security, you know, housing security, you know, food security, and knowing that they will even have a place to live the next month. You know, like, and it's empathy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I gratitude too.
Yeah, I have to admit, being the straight white guy running for office, mm-hmm. You got to really acknowledge some privilege and really realize that, like, I didn't do this on my own. I didn't make it on my own. Hell, the job that I work at functions because there's paved roads that enable transportation of goods so that I can sell them. Mm-hmm. You know, and that we're all in this together, and when we bring everyone along for the ride, we all do better. And you just really gotta think about the you know, and acknowledge that where you are is not just because of you, it's because of us. And sometimes the people that are homeless, that don't have food, the children that are in need, sometimes that's because of us too. Mm-hmm. We've made decisions that have put many people in the positions in their lives for the benefit of other interests. Poverty is a policy. Now, do I think that tomorrow I'm going to go on city council and end poverty and world hunger goes away?
I believe
and
in you, Rock.
My goodness, I clearly have the magic plan.
Yes, figured out.
No, I don't. And nothing that these are my beliefs. These are the things that inform my decisions. But it's a battle.
Oh, yeah.
And you're going to have to fight that fight. Like you said, there's a lot of people that are not going to like that. And there's some things that I have to acknowledge, too, that if people vote for me and they don't like a certain policy, and I were to sway city council to my side, and we implement it anyways, is that representation? So there's a push and pull there too, of like, I might like to have a really big, bold, progressive agenda that is wild. But if the people of Erie don't also want this, I mean, you got to listen too. This isn't about what I want to do. You got to listen to what people say. You got to listen to their thoughts and needs, and you just hope that those values that they hold means that they're going to make the right decisions.
100%. And it's good to have a candidate such as yourself come on and emphasize how important it is that you're not in here for your own means. You're in here to represent the people and to have their best interests at heart and try to make positive changes and good decisions that benefit the community as a whole, rather than your supporter, your financial supporters or anything like that. Because I feel like a lot of times when people think of government in general, that's what they think of. Like, oh, he's backed by this corporation or that corporation, and he's only going to do things that benefit that corporation because they gave him large sums of money to represent those thoughts. And it's good to have a strong, independent candidate that we can vote for that is not constricted by those types of things. And I want to thank you a lot for coming on today and sharing with us. And hopefully more people are a little bit more informed about city council and the candidates that are coming on.
I just want to ask you one more question.
Yeah.
For the people that might feel disenfranchised or just totally disinterested or left behind by the political process, that aren't going to go out to the polls anyway, why should they go out and vote for you on May 16th?
The people that are already not going to vote?
The people that are disenfranchised, the people that normally would not vote or show up to...
Like they feel their vote wouldn't matter. Like, why is it going to... If they come out when they wouldn't normally to vote for you, why is their vote going to matter?
In the city of Erie, 94,000 people. The number of people that have voted in all three of the last three primaries is a little over 5,800 people.
Wow.
That's low.
That is
5,800 people. And that this primary is going to decide who the future leaders of our city are. And odds are the number three, the last past the poll, is going to end up, by my estimation, probably around 3,800 votes. And in the last election, the separation between the last person, that was 4 people running, right? And then the next one was 218 people.
Wow.
218 people. You probably know that many people. You probably have that many Facebook friends.
Well, more than that.
Yeah, a couple more. But
I'm just now experiencing
definitely.
that. I originally started out with like 80 Facebook friends, and now it's like 300. I'm like,
Ooh,
this feels weird. It's like suddenly public. But I mean, no, I mean, that's Think about that. Just one organization could have such a huge impact on what this looks like. Hell, $50,000 spent by one candidate could make a big impact if the delta is $200 or 200 people. And so people think that their vote doesn't matter. Well, I have to tell you, it really, really does, especially local. John Fetterman won his first mayoral race by one vote.
That's insane.
Think about that. What if John Fetterman lost?
Yeah.
And then didn't become a lieutenant governor and didn't become
Senator.
a senator, and then maybe he wasn't the candidate that could beat the Republican nominee, and that we could have a Republican majority in the Senate right now if 2 people didn't come out and vote.
It's pretty crazy to think about.
Yeah, it's a big deal. People should get out and vote.
As Puff Daddy P. Diddy once said, vote or die.
Vote or die.
But vote regardless. It's so important to do it.
Especially in these local elections.
If you want to affect the change, you got to go out and vote.
So, May 16th, we want to see all of you wonderful, fantastic, intergalactic listeners out there voting. Check out Rock Copeland on Facebook.
Yeah, I would appreciate if you voted for me.
Vote
Number
for
3 on the
Rock.
ballot.
I'll vote for Rock. You guys should vote for Rock, too. This is Everything at Once official political endorsement.
Stamp
Thank
of
you,
approval.
You got
I
the stamp of
appreciate
approval. Everybody, make sure you also like, follow, subscribe. Thank you so much to all of our sponsors, Cauldron and Thorne, AFB Services, Solid State Construction, and Tommy's Automotive. You guys are all incredible. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to all our Patreon guys, too. You guys are the best. Make this all possible. Good night. Peace.
Good night.